It's a trap, goes the now meme-worthy line by Admiral Akbar in Return of the Jedi. In prospecting, it's avoiding a trap that's almost as beneficial as targeting a star. Well, we will heed these words from Akbar while we focus on both size for running backs and rushing ability for quarterbacks tonight. Is there anything we can glean from these areas? How small is too small for a high school running back to project to the NFL? Does it matter if a pocket passer can rush at all? This is the official Campus to Canton's newest show where we look at recruiting through an analytics lens and, as always, have an eye on fantasy football. Welcome into the show. I got my crew here, David and Matt, plus special guest, Chris Moxley. Before we get started, I would like to remind everyone to hit the subscribe button here on YouTube and turn notifications on so you never miss a brand new episode of The Official. In addition, don't forget to visit campustocanton.com if you haven't already. Become a member and see all of our awesome tools and content that we have there, in addition to obviously this podcast. If you like recruiting and you're watching the show, so I assume you probably do, you're going to love our freshman guide. It will come out in a couple of weeks, but it's going to have about 150 freshman profiles and then 30 or so supplemental draft picks for C2C leagues of not freshmen, but guys you want to keep your eye on. But it's something that, Matt, myself, and David all worked on. We're very proud of it and think you're going to absolutely love it. So check that out. All the information can be found by following the Campus to Canton Twitter account or going to the website. And so now we are ready to get started. Good evening, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
All right. So let's start. And I'm going to give a little background for our viewers. And also, I don't think you all necessarily read the Noah Hills article, which kind of kicked off a lot of this thought process and eventually Chris Moxley's Twitter thread about this idea of running back size. Now, we're all obsessed with recruiting, the high school, what we can know in high school and projecting it to college, and then obviously all the way to the NFL. Noah wrote an awesome article. He's over at Breakout Finder, does really good stuff. This was back in 2020, though, where basically the high points that I took from it are a running back can be considered legitimately small when you start talking about sub 200 pounds and when you get closer to 190. And then sub 190 as essentially a high school senior, college freshman, you really get into an area where those guys can't really even become like Gio Bernard. I think he did some really interesting math and found out that if you're sub 190 coming out of high school, you only have a 70% chance to even become Gio Bernard's size. And so to even get to Gio, which is like the bare minimum for an NFL starter. And as we know for fantasy, he's like good for a couple games a year, for fantasy purposes. So does that sound about right to you guys, David, Matt? And I know Chris has done some work on it, so we'll get to your stuff in particular, but like sub 200 and then kind of another line at 190.
I mean, based on talks I had with Moxley earlier, I would argue it's closer to 185, but that's mostly me holding out hope for some other players.
I know there's a specific guy you're holding out hope for. Here's another interesting tidbit that I got, and I actually DM'd Noah about this. We're always thinking about fantasy. So on average, there were 8 in his sample size. I think he looked back almost a decade. It was a lot of years. Looked back, there were 8.8 sub 210-pound NFL running backs that became fantasy relevant, which is RB3 or better, so top 36 in a given season. 3.6 of those each year were brand new into the ranks of useful running backs. So that means that half were like first timers each year. Okay, and then also 3.1 reached RB1 levels. So 3 out of 12 in the NFL that weighed less than 210 pounds in his sample, with 1.7 of those being the first time being relevant. And I asked him, hey, does this really mean that, like, okay, they can pop up for a year or whatever, but half of these guys are one and done, basically. They're not repeating. So we know they can be relevant, but you're not getting long-term stuff in the NFL. You know, they could pop up for injury or what have you, but they're not repeating. David, is that how kind of you might take that?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, first things first, I'm curious who the 185 pounders you're holding out on, Matt.
Henderson.
Yeah. So I just wanted to touch on him real quick because
oh boy, he came ready to roll.
He was the one guy I was like, I think I was the first person that was vocal about it on Twitter, just being like, this guy he looks like a wide receiver to me. Because he's 6'1". The other thing is his height too, because I think the big thing
he's very lanky.
I know there's a lot of people that hate talking about BMI, but I think it does somewhat matter for running backs. Just like when we're talking about density. So like if he actually is like his listed on 247, 6'1", 185, like to hit the density I'm looking for, which is typically like above 28 BMI, like he's got to add like 30 pounds. Apparently at the Under Armour All-American game, they were saying that he looked bigger, like closer to 195, 200.
Yeah, I was about to say, I pulled it up. On 3 has him at 195.
Yeah, so he's just a guy that I'm just very confused about. I don't like to analyze him, honestly, because it's just like, I get he's a 5-star. I get he's going to Alabama, but just the way that's kind of what I do. Like, I like to eyeball guys up, and I don't know, his frame he just kind of looks skinny to me. So I don't love that, because the way that I think about it usually is like, once you get to the NFL, you kind of need the density to actually break tackles. And if you don't have that, like, there are outlier guys like Jamal Charles, Chris Johnson, stuff like I mean, those guys are incredibly fast. So it's like, I guess they face less tackles probably.
I think you could throw Shady in there.
Yeah, Shady
as someone
too,
who misses tackles without the speed, though.
Exactly. So it's kind of an either-or situation. If you have both, then you're definitely very good. So that's kind of how I think about running backs as far as like projecting them size-wise and stuff.
Yeah, and Henderson is certainly interesting, but I would say, I mean, the 6'1", I think, is a really good point. Hills, I think actually in this article that I'm citing here, mentions there's a he had a name for it, but basically like the Chuba Hubbard body size, which is 6'1", 208, 6'1", 210. It's too tall and not. I mean, if you're 6'1", you got to be like AP, like 225, 230. I think. But anyway. We'll get to a little bit more of that. I want to bring in Chris now, who did a really nice college football filtered. That's another feature we have at Campus to Canton, where every morning Chris goes over some nuggets. If you're not listening to that, you should. It's really pretty quick, about 30 minutes, I think, of all the news and notes from the day before. But one of these days, Chris did a breakdown of this idea of running back weight. Chris, why did you want to expand on Noah's article? I know that was kind of the inspiration. And what did you, what was your sample? What did you look at? Give us briefly.
Yeah. So Noah did a really great piece, and it really inspired me to think about, more applying it to specific schools, specific situations, specific conferences, and understanding a little bit more nuance about these players, because a guy who's 190 that goes to Troy is not the same as a guy who's 190 goes to Alabama. They have different resources to bulk guys up. And so I wanted to figure out, what is the profile that Power 5 players usually represent versus G5 players versus, different levels of recruits, and how much weight do they gain? So I just, like, Noah's piece was foundational for me and made me ask questions about just digging in a little bit further for the most part.
And you did. So let's bring up a couple things here. One of the first things was that on average, these guys start at 199. This was all your comers. I think you had 304 guys you looked at. Now, what they gained 12.4 pounds on average. And so we'll see, when the next thing comes in here, they wind up at 212. Now, you had a 300 sample size. This was all players.
This was players who had a weight listed on their recruiting profile and measured in at the combine. So the way so Noah and I have different numbers at the end of the day, by about like 2 pounds. His numbers are your last listed weight in school, and mine are you had to weigh in at the combine. And the reason that I chose that is because those are relevant running backs for our fantasy purposes. Like I don't care if
that's what's the
senior,
official.
right?
Yeah, and that's going to be the official weight that like they think about when they're drafting these guys and stuff like that. And they can actually put on. I mean, some guys lose weight for the combine, and some guys put on weight. I guess depending on how they want to run the 40, etc. So that was pretty interesting. 199, your average. These are all running backs, right?
Yeah. We're explicitly talking running backs here.
Yeah, 199 to 212. With an average gain of about 12.4 pounds, I think it was. So this was when it started getting real interesting. You looked at conference weight gain by conference. And this is, I want to throw it to the group when we get done here with this slide. But G5 running backs gained 16.8 pounds. P5 running backs gained only 11.4 pounds. Inside the P5, Big Ten running backs only gained 10 pounds. And finally, SEC running backs only gained 8.6 pounds. That's just weird to me. I would actually think it might be flip-flop, like what you said, resources, weight, strength and conditioning programs, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, just I would like anyone's opinion on why this may be.
These guys are heavier entering school is really what it is, I think. The average recruiting weight for a 5-star running back is 210 pounds. And the average 4-star weight is 202 pounds. So you don't have as much weight to gain when you already have like a college build and a semi NFL build, right? And we smooth it out. And for the most part, these guys are on average bigger. When we do have outliers in terms of size, they fit within that Power 5 bucket a lot more. But just because the recruits are like on average larger in terms of weight, that is why it breaks down that way. But, it is what it is. Like, you can't expect a Power 5 guy to add 15 pounds just because he's already like 210,
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I mean, Saquon Barkley famously gained like, I think 30-something pounds.
43 pounds.
Will Emmanuel Henderson be the next guy to gain 40 pounds? I did think that was really... Yeah. I did think that was really interesting, though. Like, I think it is a reflection of these guys are the better recruits in the SEC, Big Ten, and as you go down to G5 are smaller, but it does mean the smaller guys can put on more weight, right? So if we're looking at a guy who's 190, 195, maybe he could be the 15-pound gainer and get up to 210. Because if you just look at that average of 12.4, all of a sudden guys at 195 are a little iffy. That means they're going to get to 207. That's not what I want for my potential bell cow, NFL prospect down the line. But maybe that's the guy who's going to gain 16.8 pounds. So I think it would be interesting. You did not look at that high school starting weight, like in buckets. Like if they started at 190, they averaged this much weight gain. If they started at 200, they added this much weight gain.
So I do have that data. It's not part of the thread. If you weigh between like 185 and 195, you do gain more weight. You gain about 18 pounds on average, and that includes Power 5 and G5. And I want to preface a lot of this with the idea that players who are lower weight are generally lower stars and under recruited. And I wonder if we just don't have accurate weights for them. So players who are going to these camps and actually getting weighed in and they're getting tested and they have times, or they have like different, like they do a bench press, they have a vertical jump, etc. Those guys have accurate weights. But a 3-star from like Topeka, Kansas, probably doesn't have a super accurate weight. And so there, I think, is a bias that's inherently built into G5 running backs. There's no way to correct for this bias, I don't think, but it is in the back of my mind when I think about how much these guys recruit weight is or are, whatever the grammatically correct interpretation of that is.
Yeah. That's a great point. We're dealing with incomplete information, especially when you get down into the, like you said, the Topeka, Kansas 3A school running back. I don't think they're keeping their, websites up to date at the local high school. I know that we're digging into high school stats sometimes from the actual school website, which is just, they don't really keep good records. So that's a great point about the guys who are getting more visibility and more camp run and things like that as well. So maybe there's hope for Matt's Emmanuel Henderson. Chris, I know you do have to go. Let's start you off with we're going to play a game here with the theme kind of in the beginning of the show. It's a trap. These are guys who are running backs. I have a rookie trap, a devy trap, and a freshman trap. And these are guys who weighed around that 190 mark in high school. And also, I do think there's another component here, which I didn't really have time to get into too deeply, but if you're not a good pass catcher, I think the size is a bigger problem. If you can catch passes, we know like Austin Eckler can just like score through the roof and things like that in the NFL. So not as worried about it. So these are guys who are small and didn't catch passes, and we might have an issue translating to the NFL. So number one, Chris, I'll let you do it, and you can sign off after that whenever you need to go. This is your trap. He was 192 pounds as a recruit. He's listed 210 currently in college, which, as we know, you did actually look at this, but we didn't have time to go over it. 5% receiving market share in college. Who is this?
Is this a? Yeah, I was going to say I knew who it was. It was Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, I talk too much. Yeah. But yeah, okay. Kenneth Walker the third.
Yeah, I could have told you that because his receiving market share is incredibly low, and not to get us on a tangent, but as a third-year player at Wake Forest, he weighed 200 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
He is the most interesting weigh-in to me at the combine because I don't think he's 210.
I don't either. I
think
really
he's closer to 200 than he is 210.
So he is a trap, is what we're saying. Potentially, can't receive, and if he comes in even at like 208, I mean, even 210, I'm not thrilled, but like sub 210, he's like Ronald Jones. So
I think 2.5 is probably the expectation that I have.
Yeah. And I mean, we didn't bring it up because this is more of a recruiting show. So I wanted to focus on the high school angle, but you did break down even teams and they're like listed versus actual at the combine, which we'll go into that another day.
Michigan State is one of the worst offenders. They overlist their running backs by 4 to 5 pounds.
Oh boy. Got a lot of red flags on Kenneth Walker.
Yeah.
All right, David, I'm going to throw this one to you. This is a devy trap. 190 pounds as a recruit, listed currently 210 in college. In high school, he only had 13 for 112 and 1 in 2 seasons. He plays down south, way down south. Cameron Harris.
Cameron Harris. Okay.
I mean, that's a really hard one. It could be anybody. But he's been disappointing, right? In college, he's like a top 10 recruit.
I know he's like fast. Like, didn't he hit over like 22 miles per hour in a game or something?
I think he did.
But his profile is pretty weak. I haven't really heard many people talking about him at all.
And now he's going into I think senior year at Miami, has hardly ever done anything, can't get passes, and he's going to probably be sub 210 again. This is an issue when these guys come out of high school and they're 190 and not catching passes.
I think
all right, Matt.
He declared.
Yeah, he declared.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
He's a rookie trap. My bad. I couldn't believe he declared.
I couldn't either.
Undrafted.
I was surprised. Yeah.
Oh boy, big. I need a fact checker. I had an error last week too. I need to hire an intern for this. Matt, you've got a freshman trap. He's 190 pounds. He's got no receptions listed, and 247's write-up says limited pass reps. He's a top 10.
I'll guess Jamarian Miller.
Oh, Jamarian Miller's a big-time pass catcher. This is Le'Veon Moss.
Oh, man. Don't like that.
Moss is one of those
He
guys
may
that I think
have
will add weight too.
receptions. I could not find any receptions on Max Preps or 24/7, and then his write-up said limited pass reps. I also did not see any on his tape, so a little concerning there. Very fast, but again, 190, no pass catching. So Le'Veon Moss is a trap. We got to wait a minute till the little head comes in, I guess. Okay, so there we go. Our 3 running back traps: rookie, and freshman. Chris, you are dismissed. I know you have a couple things to get to. You can hang out, of course, but if you need to go, just let us know.
Yeah, I got to jump, but I'm excited to be on. I really like what y'all are doing, and this is one of my favorite shows, and it's going to be a weekly listen for me. So keep up the good work, y'all.
Appreciate it. Thanks,
Chris.
Thank you.
Okay. So now we're going to talk about this. This I think is kind of the thing that is probably going to really open some eyes for our viewers and listeners. David, you honestly, when you first kind of told me this, I was like, maybe not. I don't know. But tell me how you came to this idea of rushing market share for a QB. And the most interesting thing is, for anyone who's paying attention here, we're not just talking about the dual threat guys. Take it away.
Yeah, so I think when I passed the idea to you, it sounded kind of weird, but I think when you're like deep down in the numbers, you kind of you can kind of find some patterns. And what I was finding when I was building the quarterback database, going through like 500 or so high school profiles, I couldn't find any like good NFL quarterbacks that exceeded 10% high school rushing market share at like their best season. Or if they didn't do that and I didn't have team data on it, team rushing data, they didn't exceed 200 yards. So it's how I'm thinking about it basically is that you need a certain I think this is more like a gauge of like football, like functional football athleticism. And so I think when these guys get to the NFL, it's not so much about like rushing yards, anything like that. It's more about like having the necessary athleticism for pocket mobility, like play extension, and I don't know, like out of structure playmaking in general. So that's kind of how I'm thinking of it. I've gone through a lot of NFL quarterbacks, and I just haven't found any of these quarterbacks that didn't have over 10% high school rushing market share. You're on mute,
Alfred.
Of course. I think it's fascinating. And I was like, I just didn't think it was going to matter unless you were a dual threat guy like Lamar Jackson or something like that. But there's some absolutely shocking players that had like really good market share, and you would never think of them as a dual threat quarterback. I was going to share my screen here with some of the stuff you've worked on. You can walk us through these NFL guys and highlight some of the ones where like, I can't believe he actually had this market share. Sure. Are we good? Okay. All right, here we go. These are the NFL guys. And you can walk us through it. I'll just navigate.
Okay, yeah, it's pretty hard to see on the screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe it's not that great after all.
Just zoom in on the sheet.
Oh, yeah. We're having a good time here, folks.
Up at top. Where it says 100%.
Oh, gosh. Okay, got it. Here we go. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah, I mean, like Will Greer's up here at the top. We'd never think of him as a rusher. Zach Wilson, kind of, but like not 50% of his high school rushing.
Yeah.
And then it gets interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
Garoppolo.
Yeah, I think if we just scroll down to the bottom, I just wanted to highlight some guys that were highly picked. So if we're talking about Dwayne Haskins for one, like he literally had negative rushing yards in high school. He was taken in the first round. He's a bust for sure. Most of these guys, like Matt Barkley, was a top 100 pick.
Mark Sanchez was a first rounder, wasn't he?
Mark Sanchez was a first round pick. He busted quickly. Jimmy Clausen went in the second round. He was a bust. Jacob Eason was like a fourth round pick.
Trask, second round pick, probably.
Yes.
I mean, we don't know, I guess, but I wouldn't.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans, I wouldn't be too optimistic probably on that.
And he's a guy you can like tell. I mean, he doesn't look like he has athleticism at all. Like I'm talking baseline, not game changing.
And you can see it throughout their college career. I mean, Trask had 54 total yards rushing in college, and then Jacob Eason had negative 126. So, I mean,
well, and look at these guys who do barely hit that 10.
I'm surprised Rosen hits 10.
Yeah, like Rosen, Derek Carr. I mean, we don't think of Jared Goff, Mason Rudolph, Joe Burrow's athletic, Davis Mills, 20%. This is their high school rush market share, by the way.
And honestly, 10%. Like I'm being pretty lenient, I feel like, because that's not even a number that's that hard to hit. You would think in high school, like you're supposed to be like, if you're an NFL quarterback, I mean, you have to be a high level athlete, and to not hit that mark in high school, it's probably a red flag. I think you can kind of gauge the level of player though, like Peterman, Rosen, Carr, Goff, all those guys are just, they're not very good athletically. They don't move around very much. So,
I mean, I think, honestly, even Mahomes, like, I don't think we think of Mahomes as in the NFL, and not even that much in college, like a true dual threat. Like we get 25 yards from him on the ground. It's like, okay, fine. But like in high school, he was torching people because like we were talking about, David, like if you're going to be an NFL quarterback, that means in high school, you're probably more athletic than linebackers. So it may not translate to being Lamar Jackson to the NFL level, but I think it's a really nice find here that they need to show athleticism in high school, because if they're going to get that far down the line, they better be way better than anyone on the field. So
yeah, that's how I'm looking at it too. So
looking at these rookies, we got Sam Howell. We know he's a pretty good rusher. Desmond Ridder, also a pretty good rusher, but kind of everybody here hits that cutoff. Bailey Zappi, no one would call him a rushing quarterback, but 20% in high school.
Right.
Pickett, Corral. These are some big ones here. I'll let you expand on Carson Strong. We've had a good laugh at this one.
Yeah. So I tried to be open-minded about Carson Strong. I was someone who was pretty vocal on him on Twitter pretty early on, just being like, this guy is just like, he can't do anything outside the pocket. Like, he's good in a clean pocket. I'll give him that. But like, I think in the NFL, you have to be more dynamic.
You never have a clean pocket. I mean, you just don't.
Yeah, you just don't. A lot of times you're just not in that good of a situation. I mean, I think he lost 116 yards in his junior year of high school. So this was pre-knee injury, by the way. So he was diagnosed with that knee injury as a high school senior. And so like, at some point I posted some basketball highlights of him on Twitter, just being like, maybe he's like a decent athlete, but like he's 6'4", so he can dunk, big deal. I don't know. I just think like he would have shown something his junior year in high school to be like, I mean, to lose 116 yards rushing, that's like really bad.
Yeah. And I think another thing that comes to mind here, we're talking about, I think we're a lot of time thinking about, having some rushing yards from a you're actually running for first downs, things like that. But I also think when you're talking about that many negative, it means not only did you not run in front of the line of scrimmage to gain some yards, you took a lot of sacks, and maybe you took bad sacks. So it may also, some of this may correlate with just bad awareness, bad recognition of pressure and getting sacked. We know I think sacks are predominantly a QB stat, not always, but for the most part. So some of this, we're thinking, rushing yards means you're a good athlete, but some of this might just mean you get sacked a lot and you can't understand what's going on around you. So I think you've really found something here that is relevant. And interesting, just looking here, I think it's easier to rule guys out. So let's look at some current NCAA players we'd get a little nervous about. This is interesting because I think people think J.J. McCarthy's a good athlete.
Yeah, so I think that was his junior year. I can't remember.
Well, his
exactly.
senior year, I think, was like COVID. It was really bizarre.
Yeah, I think he had a COVID situation. So like, I don't want to like completely rule him out because it seems like he has like a little more athleticism than that or awareness or whatever we want to call it. But yeah, I would say he's a little shaky.
This is an interesting one because we've now basically proven he's not good. Now he's at UNLV. And if we would have known that when he was a top 10 quarterback, maybe we would have been less infatuated with that arm.
Yeah, for sure. I think he started at Tennessee and I don't know, he was there. Was he only there for 1 year? And now
I think 2
years. Okay. Yeah. So he's already down to the G5. So yeah, I don't know. I just would rather, if I'm going to invest in a player, I just would rather not have him down here. Like people are probably still holding out hope for Jake Haener to be, I think it was probably pretty telling that he came back for like a 6th year or whatever it was, that he's probably not on the NFL's radar, but
yeah, he's got a lot of fans too.
Yeah. A lot of people seem to like him.
But some of these guys, Sam Heward, there's definitely still people holding out for Sam Heward at Washington. And, I don't know. Some of this paints a pretty bleak picture for these guys that are that low. But again, you can look at some of these guys up here, even getting closer to the top, like that you wouldn't really think of as excellent runners. I guess Hendon Hooker's pretty good. Bryce Young doesn't run that much, but in high school, he was awesome. Same with DJU. Quinn Ewers ain't going to run that much in college, I don't think, but 20% in high school. Like you do need to show this baseline. And so then some recruits here. Your guy, Steve Angeli, going to Notre Dame. Sorry. Walker Howard. I did not love him. And now this kind of confirmed like a little bit more on top of that. Like he looked like a statue to me.
Some of his earlier tape, he moved around a decent amount. I don't know. It seemed like he gained a lot of muscle or something and got like seemed like he got stiffer or something. I don't know. And I don't think he exceeded more. I think he had like 145 yards rushing. That was like his best season. So.
And then this is a guy we gave him a red flag last week, and now Taven Jackson coming in at only 6%, even though he's supposed to be athletic.
And
this guy's tumbling down my rankings after this data that you've pulled up. I mean, we just can't find anything he's good at all of a sudden. All right.
Yeah, I think he has a long way to go athletically. So like, it doesn't look good now, but like maybe he could surprise us. But I don't feel good about him, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're hoping for a lot there. A lot of growth, size, strength, the whole 9 yards. All right, Matt, I know that you took a couple minutes off there because I was asking David about his QB rushing market share work. So I'm going to throw you the first trap. It's a layup.
Okay.
Rookie trap. Negative 116 rushing yards his junior year in high school and negative 305 rushing yards in college.
It's got to be Carson, right?
Yeah. Carson Strong. Everybody loves his arm, but he looks terrible. I don't know why people are trying to say he has some mobility. Like he has none. And it's not, I think when we talk about mobility though, people think, oh, you don't have to be Lamar Jackson. No, you don't. But like David's pointing out here,
to improv,
Yeah. And I think I do think it's interesting that there's some other stuff baked in here with maybe being able to avoid sacks. Even if you're not running 30 yards downfield, you're avoiding sacks. So Carson Strong's a trap. I firmly believe that. I will not be drafting him. I don't care how far he falls. David, you've done this work, so I think you kind of know this. But I'm going to throw it to you anyway, and then we'll go back to Matt for the final one. He had 130 rush yards his senior year of high school, 7% rush market share in high school, and last year, negative 20 rushing yards in college.
Oh, man. Oh yeah, sorry, I
Oh,
should have got that one.
I
yeah.
thought you knew. Yeah, I thought that would be an easy one for you because you
That
told
should
me
have
about
been
it
easy for me.
20 last year.
This one was a surprising one to me, and like I know people love him, and I have been. I've been all about him. I tweeted about him quite a few times just because he's been so efficient as a passer. But like he's in the perfect situation at Ohio State. Like they have a great offensive line. Obviously, they have sick receivers.
Mhm.
Like if you take that away from him in the NFL, how's it gonna look? I don't know. I don't think he'll be like a Dwayne Haskins. I think he's probably better passer than he is and slightly more athletic, but like I don't know, maybe he's not as good as we think he is.
I think it's a great point about the perfect situation. And he lit it up last year. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But let's remember, Dwayne Haskins did light it up his year at Ohio State. I mean, he was awesome. He was absolutely awesome. So I'm a firm believer of this. I mean, we haven't like proven it, but like
It's just the theory. We don't know.
everywhere you look, though, like we've done some digging. We've done, oh, what about this? What about it? Always kind of points to the same thing. So I would back off CJ Stroud because people are propping him up as like a top 10 pick QB2 behind Bryce Young next year, like foregone conclusion. All right, Matt. This is probably going to be tough, but this is the freshman trap here. He had 84 rush yards as a senior in high school. That was only a 3% rush market share. And I'll give you a hint. He's from Texas.
Oh man.
Big arm like Carson Strong.
Oh, Griner. I don't know.
No. Malik
Garner is
Murphy.
what I was trying to say.
Yeah, Garner. I
don't think he's even from Texas. I don't think he is.
Okay. All right. Well, Malik Murphy. I knew that would be a tough one, but yeah, Malik Murphy. And you can tell this when you're watching him. Actually, I thought he reminded me a little of Dwayne Haskins, to be honest with you. He's just an absolute statue. Cannon, no doubt. No doubt he has a cannon. One of the highest miles per hour, I think, that we've measured for this class, right, David?
Yeah, I think Matt got that at like 56 miles per hour or something, right?
Yeah, around there. 56 or 57, honestly.
It's like already like premium NFL velocity as a senior in high school, but he's a statue. 3%. I mean, like David, you have not found a guy in the NFL who's under 10, like not even a starter, right? Like it's almost like you could just cross these guys off. Almost.
Yeah, so we actually have another tab. I don't know if you want to try to bring that up again or if that's going to be too hard, but the guys I couldn't find high school team stats on, like I could find their rushing yards. And pretty much it's not often that a high school team will run for more than like 4,000 yards. So you're at least like getting to 400, you're for sure going to have a 10% market share without us knowing the team data. But like 200-ish is kind of like where we're usually going to be at. So like the guys like right on the border Stafford's like the only guy that Staffords and Bortles are kind of like the questionable ones. And
which is interesting because we know Bortles ended up being a decent athlete. Like he scrambled, he got rushing yards, but
yeah, and Stafford's right on the fence. I don't know. He played in like the hardest league in Texas. Like it is possible that like his team only ran for 2,000 yards. Like that's totally.
Yeah, it's very. Like, I mean, that happens. That for sure happens.
So he could be an outlier, or we don't really know on him. But he also had like an elite. Maybe at some point we'll talk about yards per attempt and adjusted yards per attempt. But he was absolutely elite in that category in high school. I think almost like. I think it was 12.7 yards per attempt or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
So he was an insanely efficient passer. But yeah, you can see the guys down here. Kevin Cobb, second round pick. I think Mike Glennon went in the third round for some reason. I don't know. He only had a 49 mile per hour ball velocity at the combine.
Well, it's because he's that classic, like people just love like the 6'4", 220-pound quarterback.
I think he's 6'6". Yeah.
Or he's even bigger. Brady Quinn's an interesting one.
Brady Quinn was another one. So he
second round pick, right? First round pick?
He was a first round pick. There was another guy I couldn't add on here. I have a suspicion that Matt Leinart would be on this list.
When
He
you
was
go that
also-
far back, it's really hard to find like high school.
I couldn't
stats.
find anything. I know in college he had like I think he had like negative, like 100. I don't know, negative like 100 yards or something like that. But he was like another first round pick that clearly showed in college that he just had no mobility. So
it's really interesting. I mean, it's like you do need this, minimum. We have yet to find a quarterback who had, like we said, Matthew Stafford's about the lowest you can get, and he may have qualified for 10%. You got to also think they probably threw the ball a ton. I don't know if they ran for that many yards. To be honest, they probably threw most of the time. So 212 is probably decent. A little assumption there. But let's say even Matt Stafford, let's say he didn't get to the 10%. That's one guy.
yeah,
Like
and
we
we'll dig
cannot
some
find
more.
anybody.
We'll dig some more. Maybe we'll find a couple more guys here and there. But even if we do, it just seems if I'm going to invest in a quarterback, I'd probably rather, because we're trying to project so far away. I mean, we're trying to project from high school to the NFL. Like maybe this could be at least a signal, that a guy will translate or not.
Okay. I agree with you. So is there any other guys? I know we kind of looked at those recruits, but between the two of you guys, is there anybody who this kind of makes you really want to back off, since this is primarily a recruiting show?
I was a big Garner fan, but I didn't realize his rushing was that bad, his market share.
Yeah,
it can be misleading.
Garner's got a hose too, right? So he has
a big arm.
Like I think he had this second fastest in this class, maybe behind Murphy. So yeah, he's got a strong arm, but like kind of a statue. And this is not to say that they won't be good in college. Like they could probably be effective in college. It's just as far as like, are they going to be good in the NFL? I don't know. I think Taven Jackson was like the one where it's like, I don't know. I liked his tape kind of, and I liked his landing spot and all that. And then you kind of look at like his ball velocity, then you look at his rushing. So that was disappointing. And then Caleb Johnson was another guy that like, I think he was being billed as like a dual threat possibly. And
he's listed as one.
Yeah. So he's another guy that doesn't hit ball velocity, and he's got a really low rushing market share. So I don't know. He's an efficient passer. So
wasn't your guy Hauser on there? Sub 10, Alfred?
He's not my guy. He's Matt Bruning's guy. But yeah, he's not. He's and he didn't hit velocity. I mean, there's a lot of guys that didn't hit velocity or rushing market share. And I actually went through my personal rankings and changed some of the grades based on some of these more like objective stuff instead of the film. And like, I mean, Taven Jackson went from like top 5 to 24 because, I mean, you got to give guys benefit of the doubt, right? You watch it, you're like, well, the arm doesn't look super strong, but like it doesn't look terrible. But then when they're not hitting the minimum MPH that we want to see, I mean, I can like, that's like I know that number. And so I can like say he doesn't have the arm strength.
We tried a lot for Taven to find a good throw.
We did.
Tried a lot.
And then the market share, that's another one where I'm using that more as like a yes or no. Like if you don't hit that 10%, you get a 1, and basically in like mobility. Like, because at this point, it looks like it is almost a non-starter. And then, you can get, it's not incrementally goes up. After that, 2, 3, 4, or 5 is based on, to me, like more like, is this translating to actual rushing production or just translating to like mobility in the pocket and things like that? So that's how I'll grade that. But if you don't hit the 10%, you're getting a 1, and that's a big negative for these guys in my rankings. Great show, guys. I literally just looked forward to this all week. I love talking about this stuff. I love that we're always brainstorming, digging in. We do have one more thing we need to do here tonight. We're going to pick the winner of the Jackson Smith and Jigba jersey as part of our Valentine's Day promotion for Campus to Canton. So I am going to share my screen once again, and we're going to pick 3 guys, or I think they're guys or gals, to see what happens if who won the thing. So we'll go third place is, these are backups. The third place person is is Galmish. Pick number 2 is Bruning. That is not Matt Bruning. I think I think he's related though. So those are the backups. If we don't get in touch with the number 1 winner, who is Pelota. I think that's their last name. And it is Dennis Pelota. Congratulations. You have won the Jackson Smith and Jigba signed jersey. And then if we can't get in touch with him, it is Jesse Bruning. And if we can't get in touch with them, it is Ryland Galmish. So thank you for playing. Thank you for joining us. And we will reach out to those winners. We'll see you next time on The Official.
Thank you.